What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall markets. I'm going to break down why Tesla saw a bit of a sell-off today, despite the fact that SPY and the QQQ were trying to push. I'm also going to talk about some big earnings and data coming out for tomorrow, but just know that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, and the offer ends very soon at the end of March. Anyways, as far as the market's going, just know that SPY ended up seeing a nice bullish wedge that led to a breakout. So did the QQQ, and we saw the majority of stocks in the green, but Tesla was in the red. So we saw sectors like finance in the green, health technology were decent, SPY and the QQQ were pushing, but some stocks were anomalies, such as Google, which had not the best of earnings. One of their revenue segments was kind of weak, which led to this sell-off. Amazon followed Google/Alphabet and saw a little bit of red. Despite that, Nvda was in the green, and then Tesla was also in the red, down 3.5%. So why is Tesla in the red compared to the market? Why is the market green and Tesla red? Let's talk about exactly what's going on. The first thing that happened was we were getting a lot of these headlines coming out about how Tesla's sales are declining in Europe. The two main countries that announced something was that Germany saw their sales down at 59%. France saw their sales down 63% for the month of January, relative to January of 2023. That's what we saw in January 2024. Also, compared to what we saw in 2023, for 2024, we saw the EU sales down 13%. So we saw a lot of these mainstream news articles screaming about this. So what does this mean, at least moving forward? I want to remind you all that it's only January. It's not the end of the year. We just barely started the year. So seeing a slight decline is actually very common for the month of January. And then on top of that, you have to remember that we have the Model Y refresh coming out very soon. So that could be a reason why. Could Elon Musk's politics be a reason why? That's always a possibility, but it's not everything. And I still think that Tesla sales can make a nice recovery, at least for the more medium term. Now, for the short term, yes, this is a little bit more bearish. I have to admit that. And it's not the best for us. I was talking about this data that came out yesterday. So in America, we saw their sales actually down about 10% compared to what we saw last year. Although this was the second best January we ever saw, for 2025, they did about 49,000 sales. Technically, it was a decline compared to what we saw, as we saw over 50 something thousand sales in 2024. So just keep that in mind. The American sales did see a slight decline for January 2025 compared to what we saw in 2024. I'm hoping for a nice comeback, though, once we get the Model Y refresh next month. I hope that we see a strong comeback, and I think Tesla will be fine once that's out. So let's see a very, very strong comeback, at least for Tesla. But this is what was making the majority of headlines today, the sales in Germany. So you guys could see in Germany, okay, for the month of January, this is the month of January, okay, this time around, we did not do as well as what we previously saw. For January of 2023, we did over 4,000. For 2024, we saw a slight decline compared to that for just a little bit over 3,000. And then for 2025, we just did a little bit over 1,000. So that's a big decrease in their sales. For the last 3 years, it's been on a bit of a downtrend, unfortunately. So 2023, it went down in 2024, went down again in 2025 for January. And this is what's a little bit concerning for some of these investors, some of these traders out there. They did only 1,277 sales in the month of January. That's down 59% compared to January of last year. And for the last 3 months, they're down 4.5%. This is leading to some fears out there. You guys can see the number right over here. Very tiny January right here compared to what we saw in the previous ones. You could also add that if you look at their sales in Germany per quarter, this is a very small quarter so far, but we need to make a comeback for the later months. Hopefully, the Model Y refresh could help to offset this. And then we're also looking at some more data for 2025. There's a tiny dot right here, but just know that this is just how early we are into the year. Hopefully, Tesla makes a nice comeback for the upcoming months, especially as we get closer to summertime. That's what I'm essentially hoping for. So that's part of why Tesla underperformed. There was a lot of headlines coming out about how Tesla's sales were weak, big decrease in sales in Europe, and this led to some concerns. That's why Tesla's a little bit in the red compared to the market being green. Now, on top of this, there was some more news that was negative for Tesla. So what happened was during Donald Trump's presidency, he moved to put 10% tariffs on China. And as a result of that, we're seeing China retaliating. They announced that they wanted to increase tariffs to about 15% on US oil and liquefied natural gas exports, not to mention 10% tariffs on American oil and agricultural equipment. And then on top of this, they did mention that they want to charge more for EVs, in particular commodities. That could be more impactful. So this is estimated to cause more expenditures for different car companies from Tesla to Ford. They're going to be greatly impacted by this. And that could lead to even more volatility. So I think there's headlines that came out about how, this was affecting like Ford's earnings and many others like that. That's why there's a little bit more fear, at least for Tesla. So keep that in mind, guys. The tariff news was not that great. And then the bigger headline right now is the fact that their sales in Europe are declining just for the short term. Let me just remind you all, it's not the end of the world. Okay, we have to wait and see what happens for February, for March, for June. We have so many months left for the year. This is just the start. We may be off to a slow start, but there's plenty of years where that happened, and Tesla made a very, very strong comeback. So yes, okay, although Tesla's on a decline, we're looking at the support at 375. We need to hold this. If we don't hold this, we could be dipping to about 370 to 368 in that range right down there. At least that's a historical chop zone. And then if that fails us, we dump all the way down to about 365. So please keep those levels in mind. Okay. If you look at the yellow lines, we have this like bearish wedge on Tesla. I was talking about this since yesterday. I mentioned that for the medium term, Tesla's looking bearish as we're making lower highs, but for the long term, I'm still very, very bullish. This is creating a very good buying opportunity for Tesla to eventually push the 500s, 600s, 700s, 1000s, right? I do see potential for Tesla to get there for many years to come, but for the short term, it's looking a little bit more bearish. So I think tomorrow we retest 375. We'll see if we bounce off this or not. And I'll talk more about the share price in just a couple of minutes, but we're still looking very, very weak on the 4-hour and also on the daily charts. Daily looks a little bit weak. We need to try to hold 375 or else we will be dipping to the low 370s and then potentially even like 368. So just keep that in mind. So, anyways, let's talk about more factors involving the markets, and I'll break down more information about Tesla. So, we also had some big earnings that came out. We had Uber and Disney in the morning. I went over all of those already. Tomorrow, we have Lilly and Roblox announcing earnings in the morning. Then we have Amazon announcing earnings after market close. For today, right now, we just got ARM and Ford. Just looking at Ford, what's very interesting is the fact that when you look at their earnings, their adjusted earnings before interest and tax drops slightly to about $10.2 billion compared to $10.4 billion in 2023. However, when it comes to their actual earnings for the fourth quarter, that's different. They're actually not too bad. We saw the revenue at about $48.2 billion. That's above expectations. EPS was decent. However, despite their guidance coming out and them being very optimistic for 2025, there is one problem, and that's the fact that, firstly, we did see that decline I talked about earlier. They're going to be working to reduce costs, especially because of the fact that their electric vehicles are not doing as well. And then another big issue is they've been very much just questions about the tariffs that are coming out, how it's going to be affecting them, especially if we do end up getting those tariffs on Canada and Mexico very soon, right? The tariffs on Mexico and Canada are not gone. They're simply delayed, according to Trump. So they were delayed by about 30 days from the very beginning of February. Next month, they might be reenacted. And if that's the case, if they are imposed again, that could cause a lot of more volatility in the markets. It could be a little bit more negative for Ford. So we have to be very careful, guys, with this news coming out. Okay. I want you guys to be very mindful of that. And that's the reason why we start to see some more volatility, at least for Ford. That's why the share price is down. As far as the market goes as a whole, keep in mind that for tomorrow, it's going to be Thursday, February 6th, 2024. 1 hour before the market opens, we have initial jobless claims coming out and other factors. So that may cause a little bit of volatility. And then on Friday, we have non-farm payrolls, governmental payrolls, and manufacturing numbers, not to mention the unemployment numbers. Unemployment is going to be huge, so that's going to cause big volatility on Friday. So basically, the data is more quiet on Thursday. We just have initial jobless claims, but it gets more serious on Friday. Earnings get very serious tomorrow since we have Amazon announcing earnings after the bell, so get ready for that. Besides that, one last thing before I talk about Tesla stock and the others. There's a lot of fear still in the markets, but it's becoming more neutral as time goes on. Momentum is less fearful. It's starting to go up slowly. This is a good sign that the market wants to continue to get bought back up. The put to call option ratio went up to about 0.7. As soon as it went up, we start to see the market squeeze. That is no surprise about how the market makers are squeezing shorts. And then volatility is also neutral, at least for the market. So we'll see what this leads to. With that being said, guys, that is it for my video for all the news. Now let's just focus on the share prices. So as far as Tesla goes, it's all about levels. Okay, if Tesla manages to get a bounce tomorrow, just hypothetically, okay, we want to see it reclaim 380. If we get back above the 380s, this could attempt to get back up to 386, which is our 200 EMA. So break 380, I'm going to be looking for a nice rebound to 386. Okay, so watch that very closely. If we're bearish and we can't hold 375, this is going to be dipping to 368 to 370, if not to 365 if that fails us, but there's going to be a slight decline. Right now, okay, technically speaking, there is a bearish wedge and Tesla's trying to lose support. It's looking weak right now. And I think there's a very good chance that we're going to be testing this wick right here, this low around 374 to 375. So it's going to dip a little bit more. I'll see if we get a bounce from here or not. If we don't, I do expect this to continue to fall to about the 368 to 370 area. We are looking a bit more bearish right now on the 4-hour and also the daily time frame. So Tesla, of all things, is favoring downside a little bit more. So please keep that in mind, guys. That is the most likely possibility. For SPY and the others, we had a very, very nice setup. I mentioned to you all that we had this essentially going on. We had a very nice looking wedge that was forming here, right? We had this bullish wedge on SPY. I said if we break 602, we're going to 605. Lo and behold, that's where SPY went to. So now that we got the breakout, this is developing into like a rising wedge leg pattern. So as of right now, we're bullish. We had a low down here at 590, made a higher low, and we're just continuing to uptrend. So I think that although there could be a little pullback, like from right here by 1 or 2 points before we continue to uptrend like this, the odds favor more upside. If we break 605, we're looking for 608. And if we lose 602, we're looking for a dip back down to 600. With the rising wedge in place, I think that we look more bullish on SPY, and this is favoring that it wants to go even higher. Might be a small pullback tomorrow before it continues to uptrend, and we could be on our way back up to 605 then 608. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. As it looks bullish, the QQQ is looking more bullish as long as we don't lose 521. We favor a lot more upside. We are making higher lows over and over again on the QQQ, even though Alphabet/Google's earnings were not the best and we saw a bit of a sell-off. That was not enough to stop the buyers from stepping in. So the buyers are still very strong. Yes, we could see a retest of like 524.5 to 525. It's possible we get a small dip, but then we should continue to push higher and make our way up to about that 530 area as of right now. If we lose 521, we turn back down to 516. As long as we maintain above this yellow trend line, we're favoring an uptrend to about the 525 area, then eventually, the 528 area, then eventually 530 as we look more bullish. For now, the bulls have a bigger edge. On the IWM Russell 2000, we have a very nice setup. There is a possible inverse head and shoulders like setup. We also got a nice bounce off this previous resistance becoming spread this white trend line. So this is favoring that as long as we're above 230, we're looking for 232. If we lose 226.5, we turn back down to about 223. In my opinion, I think 230 is going to be tested, eventually 232 if that breaks. So the inverse head and shoulders looks bullish, and we favor 232 or above. I think we're doing a great job at holding up. ES is looking more bullish. We basically have the 6100 as our resistance. We may kind of dip like this before it continues to push for 6100. We'll see if this breaks out or not. But I think that there's a good chance that ES tries to push for 6100. Overall, it's making higher highs and higher lows. As long as we don't lose 60.55 to turn back down, we're favoring that we might dip a bit and start pushing for 6100 or above. Overall, it looks more bullish. There's going to be this yellow trend line acting as resistance for this. So we'll see if we break past 6100 or not. Might be a little tough initially, but if we break 6100, then we're looking for a bigger push to about 6120. Overall, it looks more bullish to me. On NQ, we look bullish. If we end up losing 21,500, we turn back down. But overall, we're looking like we're making higher highs and higher lows. So I think we're doing a fantastic job as well. As long as we don't lose 21,500, I think we just continue to favor this upwards move for 21,800. I think we're doing a great job, at least thus far. One thing that's happening is we're seeing liquidity being drawn from crypto, at least for now. It's not the end of the world, just a temporary dip, and it's been kind of dipping for the last couple of weeks. So to me, Bitcoin looks a little bit more bearish. Unless we get back above 100,031, this is favoring that might continue to downtrend closer to 95,000. Once we break this blue trend line, I think we're on our way up to the 100,000s again, but we're not really ready yet. So we just have to wait and see. For now, we're just getting rejected off this blue trend line, and we may just continue to downtrend for 95,000. So please keep that level in mind, as that's what I'm seeing at least on the charts. For Nvda, it's looking bullish. If we lose 122, we're looking for 120. As long as we're above that, we're looking for 126.6 and eventually 129. So I'm favoring a dip here and a bounce for 126.6, eventually higher levels like 128. Nvidia's looking bullish. Nice breakout so far, and I think 126 plus is likely coming. Like I said before about Tesla, there's a bearish wedge on it, and we are barely holding 375, looking kind of lackluster. We'll see if that holds or not. Otherwise, we're favoring a move back down to 370 to 368. Unfortunately, not looking so good. On Aapl, we have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. Looks bullish if we hold and break past our resistance. So if we lose 226, we dump to about the lower levels, such as like 222. If we manage to break past 232, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 236 for higher levels. This is favoring upside, especially if we break past 232. Then I think we're going up to about 236 as it looks bullish, especially thanks to the inverse head and shoulders like structure. As long as you break 232, we're favoring 236, so I still think it looks bullish. For Netflix, if we lose 988, we turn back down. As long as we're above 1,000, we're favoring 1,025. I think we're so far favoring upside for us to continue to push for 1,025. So I think we're doing a great job, and we are favoring the upside. For MSTR, we're on a bit of a downtrend here, making lower highs. We'll see if we break resistance or not, but I do think that because of earnings, this may dip a little bit more. Might be on its way back down towards this low right here at 321. So we'll see if that ends up holding or not. So I think that this is looking a little bit more bearish. Watch 330 and potentially 321 to be tested before it tries to bounce again. It still could be forming like an inverse head and shoulders here, but there might be a little bit more downside coming. So at the very least, look for 330, then eventually the 320s. So be careful. For Celsius, we're on a bit of a downtrend. We're looking for essentially 22, then 21.8. Might dip a little bit more here before we see some buyers defend it, but look for a little bit more downside. Supermicro is looking bullish. I do expect it to test 32.9. If we break that, we're looking for 34 as our target. If we lose 30 flat, we turn back down, but I'm favoring a move like this, back up to 32.9, and we'll have to see if that breaks or not. If so, we're going up to the 34s, so just keep that in mind. For Palantir, we're looking for 100 as our target. We need to hold that, or else we're going to be testing 97.5, then 93.5 as our supports. I favor that it's going to be dipping a little bit more, and we'll see if we bounce off 97. So watch to see if 100 holds. Otherwise, we could be dipping lower. For Rivian, we had a nice looking falling wedge like structure, making lower highs and lower lows. But we're starting to break out of this. If we get back above 13, we're looking for a push for essentially 13.5. If we lose 12.6, we're looking for a dip. But I think that with the inverse head and shoulders, we look bullish for 13. I think there's a good chance we try to push higher. For SoFi, it's trying to hold support here. As long as it does not lose 15.16, we could be bouncing for essentially the 15.6 to 15.9 area. So we'll see how things go. As long as you don't lose 15.16, we could just try to push right here for 16. I think there's a good chance we try to push right back up. For AMD, I think AMD is getting bought back up here. As long as we don't lose this low, what I think is going to happen is we might return back down to our 0.618 fib level before it pushes back up to this 113 zone like this. I think it might be retesting that. Then we'll see from 113, do we get a rejection off this previous support becoming resistance right back down, or do we just start breaking out? We'll be watching to see which way this breaks. But there is a risk of it potentially dipping lower if we don't break past that. So that's what I'm seeing for now on the share price. ARM is going to be testing 160. If it doesn't hold, look for 156. It is down after earnings because of their outlook, so it's not looking the best, unfortunately. For coin, we're on a bit of a downtrend, making lower highs here. We need to reclaim 277. If not, we could be dipping back down to 272. Amazon is consolidating between this support at 234 and resistance at 237. It looks bullish, though. Could try to kind of break out for like 240, come back down, try to push like this. If we get good earnings tomorrow, it could be breaking out to the 250s or it could be dumping to the 220s. I'm looking for a very, very big move. We'll see which way it goes depending on the data. Meta is testing 700. We'll have to see if that holds. If it does not hold, we could be dipping back down towards 694. As of right now, it's going to shuffle at 700 and maybe push to 710. So we'll see. Microsoft looks bullish. As long as we get back and hold above 412, we could slowly make our way up to about the 415 area. I anticipate a lot of chop, though, kind of like this at first before it slowly inches its way up to about the 415 area. Google is kind of flat here. We'll have to see if 191 holds. If it does hold, we're looking for a bounce to 195. And if we lose 191, we could be dipping lower. So far, we're holding support, so I think 195 becomes a stronger possibility. For GameStop, we're at support here around this 25 area. If it does not get back above that, I think that 24.5 or below is coming. AMC has resistance at 3.17. If it doesn't hold, we're dipping to the low threes. DJT is looking a little bit lackluster below its 20 EMA. We could be dipping to about this 29.9 area, then eventually 28. The VIX is bearish, which tends to be bullish for the markets, but one could also argue that there's like a falling wedge-like structure that's starting to develop on it. So we'll see if this pans out. For now, it looks bearish. So this is technically favoring downside. It's going to likely slowly continue to downtrend for now until we get a breakout. We're not ready yet. So that tends to be a bullish sign for the markets. The 10-year is approaching support around 4.37, so we'll see how it goes. And the dollar is trying to bounce here, so we'll have to see how that goes as well. But overall, it's not really affecting the market until we get unemployment. So with that being said, the broader markets are bullish. Tesla's barely at support at 375 right now, so we'll see if it holds or not. If not, there's going to be a risk of more downside, so please be careful with all this negative news about their sales declining. Once again, it's not the end of the world, guys. Just another buying opportunity for Tesla, especially if there's more downside coming. It's a good opportunity at dollar cost average if you guys are interested. Not financial advice when I say that, but with that being said, I appreciate you guys so much for listening. Have a good one, and I'll be back with another update tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening, and peace out.